Laurie Cardozo-Moore, and this is Focus on Israel. In May of 1948, the war for independence looked hopeless as 5 Arab countries engaged in a relentless attack to destroy the fledgling Jewish state and literally drive the Jews into the sea. The Israeli Air Force that had begun with one Cessna dropping homemade bombs from its windows miraculously acquired 4 scrap World War II fighter planes from Czechoslovakia. Secretly shipped and reassembled in Israel, many doubted whether these planes would even get off the ground. It was a race against time as a massive Egyptian army closed in on Tel Aviv. Today on Focus on Israel, you'll learn more about how the 4 pilots who led the attack that day became the founding fathers of one of the world's most feared aerial fighting forces. Hello, I'm Laurie Cardozo-Moore, founder of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating and sharing the message of Christian biblical responsibility to the people and land of Israel in the face of a growing global anti-Semitism. Proclaiming Justice to the Nations was birthed to stop the silence, to wake up Christians and people of conscience to the realities of a world bent on destroying Israel and the Jewish people. On May 29, 1948, Israel declared its independence, and the lives of thousands of Jewish people and the young country itself hung by a thread. Pilots Lou Lenart, Modi Alan, Ezra Weizman, and Eddie Cohen took to the sky in 4 little planes in an effort to halt the Egyptian army's advance on Tel Aviv. Against all odds, those 4 pilots made a difference, striking Egyptian forces near Ashdod. Seemingly out of nowhere, they flew in to drop bombs and fire at a stunned army. The army that thought they could easily walk over and massacre the little Jews were thrown into fear and confusion. They didn't even know Israel had an air force. The attack achieved its goal as the Egyptian army literally stopped in their tracks. When one of the brave pilots, Lou Lenart, was asked how they did it, he remarked, "We just didn't have a choice. That was our secret weapon." Lenart had secretly traveled from America to help his Jewish brethren. Born in Hungary, he emigrated to the U.S. with his parents when he was 10 years old. After he graduated from high school in the summer of 1940, he joined the Marine Corps with one target: kill as many Nazis as possible. He was the only Jew in boot camp and served as a foot soldier before being accepted to flight school. But instead of killing Nazis, he was assigned as a fighter pilot fighting the Japanese in the Pacific Theater. He flew one of America's premier fighter planes, the Corsair. He was discharged as a captain after the war and came home to discover that 14 members of his family in Hungary were murdered by the Nazis. In early 1948, he attended a lecture that persuaded him of the importance of the Zionist cause. Through back doors and secret meetings, he made his way to the Promised Land to help found the Israeli Air Force. We had the opportunity to meet Lou during a visit to Los Angeles. His indomitable spirit and never-ending smile made us fast friends and great fans of his aerial exploits. After lunch at the Proud Bird restaurant near the LA airport, he showed us 2 of the planes on exhibit there that he flew for America and later for Israel. In 2007, at the Proud Bird restaurant in Los Angeles, a special dedication ceremony to Lou was held as a monument and a replica plane were unveiled for display.
This is a very special gathering and a special night for all of us who come together here to dedicate something very special. And tonight, we celebrate heroism from years gone by and heroism in our own time. And that is a very important component of why we gather here tonight. And Tonight, I want to call on a few people who are going to make a special presentation. I'd like to call on them together for this moment. David Talashe, presenting the F4U Corsair, Jonah Goldrich, and Lou Leonard. Will they please come up for a few words and to unveil this monument? Let's hear it, ladies and gentlemen.
This monument is dedicated to Captain Lou Leonard and to all U.S. Marine Corps and Navy pilots who flew the F4U Corsair or the FG-1D Corsair in combat during World War II. Captain Lou Leonard, U.S. Marine Corps, retired BMF 323, Israeli Air Force Squadron 101. Captain Leonard later served as a volunteer during the State of Israel's 1948 War of Independence and led the first mission of the Israeli Air Force, then only 4 Me-109s.
And now let's give a real nice warm applause to our honoree, to Lou Leonard. Lou.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see if I'm here. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming here and joining with me this evening. Now, I want to share this honor with my fellow aviators, all of them who flew in this wonderful, beautiful aircraft called the Corsair. I want to share it with them in spirit, but I especially want to share in memory of those who fell in battle defending our United States of America, flying this aircraft. But the whole experience with this Corsair was sort of a prologue. I got involved with something that was the most important event of my life and for which I was born. Israel at that time, it was still Palestine, was totally surrounded and invaded by the 5 Arab armies of the 5 Arab nations. We were cut in 3 pieces. They had everything. They had about 50 Spitfire Mark 9s. We had 4 miserable imitations of a good German plane, the Messerschmitt, which was built by the Czechs. The question then was what to do. And since I was it was my great good fortune, since I was the only one with combat experience of the 4 people there at the time, I was asked to be the leader. The whole Egyptian army was 6 miles away from our air base and 14 miles from Tel Aviv. And the whole Egyptian army at that time represented anywhere from 12 to 14,000 men, 800 vehicles, tank, trucks, and artillery, and nothing in between them and Tel Aviv except maybe about 200 soldiers. So it was virtually undefended. The message was, you have to fly now, because if you don't, the Egyptians may be in Tel Aviv tomorrow and the whole picture is lost, and maybe there's no Israel. So here we are. I was about 23 years old at the time. We prepared, and within the hour, we were in the airplanes. They had painted on the Star of David. The engine started, and they got out of there real quick, 1, 2, 3, 4, to the runway and took off. And as we came out of the turn, I looked down and I saw the whole Egyptian army. As far as the eye could see, they were camped bumper to bumper because the bridge was blown up. And they didn't know that we had airplanes. And they didn't know that Jews could fly. So I looked down and saw them. And I just want to stop for a minute to tell you, here was a young man of 23 whose part of his family was killed at Auschwitz, who suddenly is in a German-designed airplane with the Star of David on his wings. Looking down, I saw the whole Egyptian army, and looking to the side, I saw Israel. And I felt at that time, maybe it's because I'm a sensitive Hungarian, but I felt that I was protecting the people of Israel with my wings. veritably protecting it with my wings. The emotional and spiritual feelings that I've experienced at that time, there is no comparison. There's no money that could compare with that sense of destiny, that sense of feeling. And then took a deep breath, pushed the nose over, and the place exploded. There was fire, explosion, death, panic, and all kinds of other good things to them. And what happened is we expended our ammunition, we stayed low and did as much damage as we could. And then I found out I was alone. Everybody had already gone back. Well, everybody didn't go back. My number 4 was hit and was killed. So in that first mission, we lost 25% of the pilots of the Israel Air Force, and then 50% of the airplanes, because on the way back, my number 2, Modi Alon, he also ground looped and the airplane was terribly damaged. But the sadness, because we were brothers. We were really brothers, all of us. And to lose somebody like that you were so close to is very hard to take. However, that night, our intelligence people intercepted a message from the Egyptian commander, and this is in the history books. The Egyptian commander facing us, sending his message to Cairo, and I quote, "We are heavily attacked by enemy aircraft, and we are scattering." They never moved 1 inch forward. They moved east toward the Jerusalem where the Jordanians were, and that bridge, when it was rebuilt, was named, in English it's called "To Here and No Further," or in Hebrew, "Gesher Ad Halom." And that's in the history book, and it was, all I could tell you, I was the luckiest person that I know to have been able to be at the right place, the right time, the right motivation, and the right experience to have participated one little bit in the defense and security of Israel. Thank you.
Up next is a new documentary titled Above and Beyond, about the birth of the Israeli Air Force. It was produced by Nancy Spielberg, the sister of, yes, that famous Jewish director who has given us so many entertaining films, Steven Spielberg. This film is the first feature-length documentary about the men who flew in the War of Independence. It brings together new interviews with pilots from the '48 war, as well as leading scholars and statesmen, to present an extraordinary, little-known tale. The full film is now available at aboveandbeyondthemovie.com.
Visualize 2 little beaten up airplanes on this abandoned runway in Brindisi, Italy.
We had to travel 1,000 miles to Israel. We were reading every day about the convoys in Israel being trapped in the hills. In one case, it was a convoy had 40 doctors that were killed.
It was desperation time in Palestine. There was food to be dropped, ammunition to be dropped, and they only had a few Piper Cubs. So these airplanes were critical to get over there.
We didn't have life rafts, no operational radios. We were in a hurry.
I saw some beautiful wildflowers right by the runway.
I saw Lou jump out of his airplane and pick flowers. I wanted to kill him, but I was able to control myself.
"11.5 hours of watching that single propeller go round and round and round. never saw land, never saw a ship, never saw an airplane, nothing but just water.
11 hours over water with a single-engine aircraft. The only person I know that ever did that was Lindbergh. We circled the Tel Aviv airport. It was nothing but a dirt strip. And after about 45 minutes, we were able to come in and land.
These two little airplanes were the biggest thing that they had in Israel. The very next morning, they were already dropping supplies to the kibbutzim. I handed the flowers to the first woman I saw.
Well, that's Lou. I learned afterwards that we were the first ones to arrive. That was the beginning of the Israeli Air Force.
אנו מכריזים בזאת על הקמת מדינה יהודית בארץ ישראל.
Saturday morning, Tel Aviv was bombed. The Jews are holding their ground in the country in spite of the fact that they have been outnumbered by the Arabs, and the Arabs have come much better equipped with heavy arms than the Jews have in their possession.
The Egyptians bomb sites inside Israel. They attack the central bus station in Tel Aviv, killing several dozen people.
A frantic call came in for assistance in the south.
About 5 o'clock, Shimon Avidan rushed up in the Jeep. He says, look, 6 miles from where we're standing now at the airbase is the whole Egyptian army of about 10,000 men, and we have nothing to stop them. He says, if you don't go now, they'll be in Tel Aviv in the morning and there's no Israel. This was the Air Force of Israel. These 4 people and 4 junk airplanes. That evening, our intelligence intercepted a radio message from the commander of the Egyptian army, and I quote, "We are heavily attacked by enemy aircraft and we are scattering."
It was probably the single most important flight in the whole Israeli Air Force. They stopped the Egyptians cold.
That first phase ended successfully in the sense that the Egyptians had been stopped in the south, and there still was a Jewish state. And Israel geared up knowing that there would be a round 2.
We will never surrender. We have to study as fast as possible so there will not be another Holocaust.
On the 8th of July, the Egyptians broke the first truce.
The Air Force plan was to have this lightning raid right at the beginning of the next round of fighting, to go after the most forward Egyptian base at El Arish and to knock their planes out on the ground. Lou Lenard, again, headed that mission.
Egypt had been bombing Israel for all this time. Cairo had never been bombed before. When they flew into Cairo, the radio went off from the traffic control tower at the Cairo airport asking the plane to identify itself. One of the pilots said, "Oh, this is TWA Flight 38. We're coming in," and they turned on the runway lights at the airport for this B-17, which of course strafed and bombed the Cairo area as a result.
One bomb fell near King Farouk's palace, and psychologically it made a very, very profound impression on the Egyptians.
Next day, the Israeli army pushed the Egyptian army back.
Fighting and winning by this time.
The final phase of the war was from the 22nd of December. It was a great battle, and the Air Force threw in everything it had against the Egyptians, the B-17s and the Spitfires and the C-46s. it really was a hell-out effort, you might say.
In 1949, there was a big parade. I received my wings. I had tears in my eyes. This was my wish. Long time when I was a kid. Now I became a pilot in the Israeli Air Force, in my Air Force, my country.
We built an Air Force. We started an Air Force.
If you wrote the history of the Jewish people 1,000 years from now, there are two things that I can tell you will be in it. One is the Holocaust, one is the birth of the State of Israel. The people who went to Israel and participated in this effort were, really part of two of the most significant, incredible, devastating, tragic, euphoric episodes in Jewish history, I think for all time.
As a Jew, I now felt proud of being Jewish.
I was born to be here on that moment of history, to contribute to Israel's survival.
Shortly before I left Israel, I happened to be in Tel Aviv when they were bringing in refugees from the death camps in Europe. I remember them getting down on their hands and knees and kissing the ground. I knew then and there that was the reason that I came.
Today, the Israeli Air Force serves as the front line of defense for Israel. In the skies over the Middle East, it has dominated all its enemies with unbeatable efficiency and a win-loss ratio never achieved by any Air Force in history. It has also reached out far beyond its borders to rescue Jews and Israelis and attack potential threats. On June 7, 1981, the IAF carried out a crucial surprise attack and destroyed an Iraqi nuclear reactor under construction. Even though Israel was strongly criticized around the world, the strategic bombing essentially ended Saddam Hussein's pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Since its birth, the IAF has faced numerous challenges head-on, and no tribute to them is fitting enough as they continue to display courage and honor in the line of duty. Since 1948, 1,100 IAF aviators have given their all for the Jewish state. The death of so many has thus brought life to a nation forever thankful for its brave and skilled aviators. It is often said that the defeat of the Israeli Air Force would bring the death of this tiny nation. Well, that's our program for today, and I want you to know we appreciate your support. The time to take a stand is now. Be a leader in your community and in your church. One person can make a difference. Get involved with and support pro-Israel organizations such as PJTN. Call your senators, congressmen. Let your elected leaders hear from you. Visit our website to learn more and sign up to receive action alerts and order our films to share with family and friends. Please encourage everyone you know to tune in and become informed. God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren and all Israel. We'll see you next time on Focus on Israel.
To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, P.O. Box 682711, Franklin, Tennessee 37068. You can also support PJTN online. Visit pjtn.org or call 1-877-873-9020.
Anti-Semitism has reached epic proportions, and Israel is now surrounded by nations who seek its destruction. For Israel to lose just one battle would mean losing everything. As Christians, it is our biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and Israel. PJTN needs your help to reach more Christians with this urgent message. Please visit our website to become a member today and order our award-winning documentaries. You must decide that you won't be silent. Sign up now at pjtn.org. God bless you, and thank you for your support and prayers.